Hey everybody, welcome to Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. It's Jason, Chucky. We're here for the NBA and NHL Finals edition of the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends. And it should be interesting. I mean, you've got two teams that are number one seeds in the Denver Nuggets and our own Vegas Golden Knights, and two teams from Florida that are both number 8 seeds in the Miami Heat and the Florida Panthers, Jay.
Well, about a month ago, I mean, this is surprising where we're at. A month ago, it was really, we were talking about Boston and the fact that the Bruins and the Celtics are both kind of sitting atop their leagues, and how many championships would we get out of Boston? And to everyone's surprise, we get 2 8 seeds in the Panthers and the Heat and the city of Miami, well represented. Right. And again, both kind of shocking that we're seeing both these two teams in their respective finals.
So we're going to kind of jump into both. We're going to kind of critique it, go through some fun stuff we have on the board, kind of give our case for each team in each sport of why they're there. There's some kind of cool parallels between the two, interesting storylines. But let's jump into the NBA first. So Miami-Denver preview. We know how good Denver's been. I mean, the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. They haven't lost at home since March. They've got the Joker, who's phenomenal. And you look at Miami on the other side, number 8 seed, the only team to play in the finals with a negative point differential during the regular season. They had to play in the play-in round. They trailed the Bulls, a banged-up Bulls team without Lonzo Ball, by, I think, 5 with 3:35 to go. Came back and won that game, and the rest is kind of history. But they got their hands full playing against this Denver Nugget team.
Well, let's start with the Heat. I mean, we just talked about it. They're the surprise team, going in as the 8th seed, knocking off number 1 Milwaukee, beating the Knicks, and then seeing what was potentially an epic Game 7 in Boston, where the Celtics could have became the first time an NBA team came back from a 0-3 deficit. They get it to 3-3 and then lose as a home favorite on the home court.
They didn't lose. They didn't show up.
They collapsed. They couldn't make a three-pointer. The Heat and Caleb Martin really kind of stole that Game 7 from them. And I think when you get to this point now, we talk about having these 2 8 seeds, but they're not 8 seeds anymore. They're just the team that's in the finals. I'm sure that Milwaukee or Boston wasn't putting an 8 seed next to that team, in the Heat, and so I think you could throw that out. But the way that they're playing, the leadership of Jimmy Butler, the cast behind him, Caleb Martin in particular coming back, and we've seen it with Vincent or Bam. They've been able to have these big games. The Heat really do it more on the defensive side of things. They're one of the best defenses in the NBA. They've shown that throughout the playoffs. But Jimmy Butler has just kind of willed this team to win. And now when you look at this series and you look at the flip side of what they're going to have to accomplish to knock off the Denver Nuggets, who are the number 1 team coming out of the West. You've talked about just dominant at home, haven't lost since March, and also dominant against the Heat. You go back, these teams don't obviously play each other very often. They've played 10 times since 2019, and Denver's 9-1 against them. So something about what the Nuggets have done matchup-wise against the Heat clearly has favored the Nuggets in this situation. And that's why we see the Nuggets, they're a 9-point favorite in Game 1 at home. They're going to be an 8.5 to 9-point favorite in all of their home games. They're going to be a favorite on the road in Miami, and that's why you see them as a 420 favorite to win this series. Is just they've been dominant on their side of the conference, knocking off the Timberwolves, knocking off the Suns, and then we saw kind of an absolute demolition of the Lakers. The only thing that worries me a little bit for the Nuggets sitting here as such a huge favorite is this long layoff. I don't think that a long layoff is necessarily what a team playing in the playoffs wants to go through. You're rolling, you're hot, you've got that momentum, and now to sit for all these days and watch the Heat play, and will that give the Heat the momentum or some type of advantage? But man, Denver's been absolutely incredible. Joker's been unbelievable. For me, I think this series comes down more to Jamal Murray. I think he's the guy that's really, as much as he's their Joker's their catalyst and doing everything. I think he's got 8 triple doubles this playoff season. He's really lined up to win an MVP of the playoffs award. Embiid kind of stole the regular season one from him that he probably should have had. But Murray's the guy that is going to go lead them in points, and I think I'm also expecting a big series from Aaron Gordon as well.
Yeah, I think you talked about it, 9-1 against them in the regular season over the last couple of years, 2-0 this year. But you look at the 2 games this year, they won at home in Denver by 5, They trailed by double digits in Miami, came back and won that game by 4. So although it's a small sample size, average margin of victory, 4.5 points. They're double that in this game, 9 points against the Miami team that's really playing with house money right now. Come into this game really relaxed, kind of nobody expected them to be here. Spoelstra is one of the best coaches in the league. Outside of guys like Phil Jackson, I mean, he really has done a phenomenal job with what he's been able to accomplish with 4 undrafted free agents who are in the mix for the Miami Heat.
Well, and if you like the Heat, one of the things that the Heat have been able to do is go steal these game ones.
Right.
And did it in Milwaukee, did it with the Knicks, did it with Boston. They won all the game ones. They were able to come back and actually win game 2, obviously, against Boston. But this is their chance. Maybe the Nuggets on all this rest, Miami has a chance to go out and steal this game number 1.
You look at Denver, they're the 3rd largest finals favorite over the last 20 years. And, there's a reason for that. Again, we've hit a lot of the key points with that. I think one of the really cool props that's up now is that kind of Florida prop that we put on the board. I know during the regular season, late, we had up would both Boston teams actually win the championship. You could bet they both would, neither would, or one would. And now you've got it up for the Florida teams that how many games in the finals will the Panthers and Heat win? Anywhere from 0 to 8, of course, 8 being that both teams win their respective champions.
Yeah, and talk about we're talking about it from an NBA standpoint, the number of props that we're putting up. And again, game is tomorrow. Team is still working on props, but literally player points, rebounds, assists, 3-pointers,
triple doubles.
I mean, the exact number of games. If you're looking for, you think Denver's going to sweep this, that Miami's hit their run and course. They go into Denver. Obviously, we talked about they'll be a dog at home. You can get that 9-2 on the Nuggets to go ahead and sweep this series. So, I mean, just a plethora of props, every different way that you can imagine to bet the game is currently available on the app.
A lot of cool stuff. Again, that series actually starts Thursday. Game 2 isn't until Sunday. But in between that, hey, I think it's time to talk a little bit of ice hockey here. VGK, our Vegas Golden Knights, number 1 seed in the Western Conference, was that number 1 seed. Late in the season, really was able to stay there and stay kind of starve off some of the teams that were right behind them there. This is a team that was able to win all 3 playoff series. They were a dog in the playoff series against Edmonton, still won that, played really well against Dallas, shut them out twice on the road. Aiden Hill has really stepped up and played great. But against a Florida team that no one expected to be here, the roles are kind of flipped a little bit, Jay. When you look at last year, Florida was the President's Trophy winner. They did go through that coaching change with Quenneville for some off-ice issues. What happened there? They win their first playoff series. They lose their second playoff series. VGK last year, with a brash of injuries, doesn't even make the postseason. Now VGK is number 1 in the West, and you look at Florida that needed Chicago, that was a $4 underdog the second to last day of the regular season, to go into Pittsburgh and win to knock the Penguins out and give Florida a chance, and that happened, or Florida wouldn't even be in the postseason.
I mean, this has been, we talked about it the last time we did the show, of just the incredible run that the Knights are on, as well as the Panthers. Expected these series, be it the Western and Eastern Conference Finals, to be a little bit tighter than what they actually were. Obviously, Florida rolls through Carolina with the 4-game sweep, winning 3 games in overtime. Kachuk has 3-game winners. I mean, just an absolutely epic series. And really expected Dallas to be a little bit more competitive against this Knights team. The Knights really, I hate to say it, but from a Dallas standpoint, they embarrassed Dallas in both games. 3 and 6,
right?
With the 4-0 win, and then the 5-0 or 6-0 win in the final one. Really, the forecheck that the Knights put on Dallas just couldn't handle it. Ottinger, they made him look really, really bad. The Knights played great across the board.
Aren't you surprised that they left him in the game, though, in Game 6?
Oh, yeah, Game 6, I was surprised he didn't get pulled. But, again, DeBoer having respect for his guys, maybe to come back. And not necessarily that it was his fault. Their defense just really got lit up by the ice, by the Knights. You could see the speed on the ice for the Knights. If we would have gone into that series and you would have told me Jack Eichel doesn't score a goal, I would have said that probably is a good sign for Dallas. But Marchessault and Carlson and Barbich, I mean, these guys were absolutely fantastic throughout the series, and I think they're just gaining that momentum as we head into the finals. And I think, when we specifically look at this matchup, Knights versus the Panthers, I'm not ashamed to say I think the Knights are the better team. I think you look at everything from an offensive standpoint, a defensive standpoint, a special team standpoint, the Knights across the board are the better team. 5-on-5, the Knights are the better team. However, Boston, Toronto,
Right.
and Carolina all would have said that same thing going up against this
Right.
Florida Panther team. And there's one guy on that Florida Panther team that has dictated the 3 series in the Eastern Conference, and that's Sergei Bobrovsky.
Right.
The Florida netminder has been absolutely fantastic. He's the favorite to win the Conn Smythe, which is the MVP of the playoffs. If the Florida Panthers are to pull the upset here and beat the Knights, make no mistake, it's going to be Sergei Bobrovsky standing on his head in net, because that's what he's going to have to do for them to steal another series, because the Knights are really rolling. They've got all 4 lines playing good offense, playing good defense. They're blocking shots like you wouldn't believe. Now, Florida does have goal scorers. We've all seen what Matthew Tkachuk can do here. Barkov, Reinhardt, Bennett, Verhaeghe. They've got some guys that could put the puck in the net. Hill has been absolutely fantastic. But for me, this series starts and ends with the Knights unlocking Sergei Bobrovsky. If they're able to get to him, pepper him with pucks, and he can't stand on his head, we'll watch the Knights lift the cup here.
Well, I think one of the key factors, though, is that Bobrovsky was playing so well. The last thing he wanted was 10 days off. Bob is, I think, the key right now. And you look at VGK, and you alluded to some of the really key points. They led the league in block shots during the regular season. They've led the league in block shots during the playoffs. They play a system that protects the goaltender. First, they lose Logan Thompson. Then they lose Broussard. And now you've got Aiden Hill in there right now, who's really been the king of the hill. He's played phenomenal between the pipes right now. But you look at Vegas, and it doesn't matter who scores. I love what Bruce Cassidy said when he said, we don't chase lines. Where other teams you see do that, they get their top guys out there a lot more frequently in close games. He's allowed his 4th line to get out there and compete. And what have they done? They've delivered. Every single guy on that team scored a point in that round against Dallas. They only had 1 guy during the regular season to score over 60 points, and that was Jack Eichel. Dallas had 6 guys that did that. So you look at a team effort, it's VGK. I mean, it screams team effort. It's next guy up. The misfits who were there, if it's a Riley Smith or Jonathan Marchessault or Carlson, who were there during that inaugural season, who lost to the Capitals, now have a chance to bring a Lord Stanley's Cup back to Vegas and win this. So I think they're a highly motivated team to try to achieve that.
Well, we talked about a couple highly motivated Vegas Golden Knights, Jonathan Marchessault and Riley Smith. Marchessault was left unprotected by this Florida Panther team in the expansion draft. The Knights pick him up. They also acquire Riley Smith in that same transaction. So Jonathan Marchessault, this has got to be a chip on his shoulder. The team that let him go in the expansion draft, the chance to come back and play against them in a Stanley Cup final, and he's been absolutely on fire. You can make the argument, talk about the misfits, Carlson and Marchessault right there at the top, leading the team in the playoff run. They've been absolutely fantastic. And really, you go back and you look at this Knights makeup, and you talked about what Cassidy has brought to this organization and the way that they've changed. And really, for me, it screams more on the defensive side of things.
Yeah.
When we talk about a guy like Pietrangelo and Theodore, who we know can be prolific scorers. I mean,
they're offensive defensemen.
Yeah, those are offensive guys, and they're not scoring. They're not even trying. They're not even.
They don't
looking
have
to
to
score
though in this
because
system.
that's the system, and that's the whole team game that they put together. And this is, if the Knights can complete this, it's an incredible culmination of watching this team come up, lose in their inaugural season in the Cup, and watch, a team that had fan favorites and guys like Schmitty and Fleury and Tuck and Haula, and we let those guys go and kind of went big name hunting and go after a guy, Pacioretty, and that didn't end up working out. And Pietrangelo and Stone and Eichel, and just to watch the makeup of this team and the commitment that Foley, has made to spending money to bring this team in. It's just been, McPhee, McCrimmon, everything that they've done. It'll be absolutely incredible if they're able to lift the cup.
Yeah, you look at them, and I just go back to what we said earlier, is that it really is that next man up approach. They seem to all like each other. It doesn't matter who scores. You can roll those lines out there. They're fun to watch. I think that game against Dallas, for me, was one of the best games I've seen any team play the entire season. They had a bigger jump. They were physical. They were hitting. They looked phenomenal in that game. One thing we didn't really touch on with Florida is that Florida is a big, physical, nasty team, and not nasty in a negative way. It's just kind of that style. They are going to deliver a lot more hits than VGK saw in any of the 3 series in the Western Conference. That's just the way they play. We saw a lot of goal scorers more in the Western Conference. I think with these games here, you're going to see maybe some of those 1-0, 2-1 3-2 games, a lot closer games, because that's the way teams play in the Stanley Cup Finals, and that's the way these two teams play. So I think it really screams under a lot more than what you saw in the playoffs so far this season.
Specifically the ability to stay off the off the penalty kill and the power play for both these teams. We saw the Knights against Edmonton.
What's a penalty? Does Vegas take any?
Couldn't stay off the penalty kill, and they put the Knights consistently on the power, or the Oilers on the power play, and the Oilers were able to really, really hurt them with the power play. As that series went longer and longer, the Knights stayed off the power play, were able to knock off Edmonton. Very, very few penalties against Dallas. Didn't put Dallas on the power play. And again, that's going to be the key here. They are the better 5-on-5 team. They cannot put Florida on the power play and give Florida the ability to go ahead and maybe get.
They're actually a better 5-on-5 team than they are with the man advantage.
And it'll be the same thing for the Panthers. They're not going to want to put the Knights on the power play. But again, you're in the finals. You got to do everything you can to try and win these games. But I am like you. I think that we're going to see a lot of 5-on-5 hockey, a lot of under hockey. But I mean, again, we talk about the availability of props and the number of different things that you can bet on. The team, when we told the team, hey, Knights are in the cup, go make that Super Bowl menu of props.
So it was kind of like, go, props, go, right?
I mean, go in there on the app and look at the amount of different things that you can bet on in the game, from shots, goals, saves, from the series standpoint, number of goals by guys in the whole series. Not only to win the series, but the Panthers to win the series by 2 or more games, the Knights by 1 game, Knights by 2 games, exact number of games. I mean, there's so many different ways to bet the game. And remember, in both of these series, you can bet these games throughout the game. The in-play is offered as the game is going on. So again, get the mobile app. Make sure you get on STN Sports. So no matter where you're at, you can get in the game on both the NBA and NHL finals.
We know it's a lot of fun, to go to T-Mobile, to be in Toshiba Square and enjoy the games, but we know it's a tough ticket. So if you can't be there, I don't think there's a better spot to be than any of our race and sports books, because the atmosphere, the Knights gear, people screaming and yelling and having fun is going to be phenomenal in all of our race and sports books. It's going to be kind of a fun time. My favorite prop, though, is who's going to score the first goal in Game 1, because we have no idea. I mean, if they're playing Edmonton, you would favor guys like McDavid and Draisaitl. But in a series like this, and especially from the VGK side, it's not going to stun me if anybody scores the first goal for Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, again, you've got a wide array of guys that have been scoring on both of these two teams. Obviously, Tkachuk has had some big game winners, but really balanced scoring throughout that Florida lineup and really balanced scoring throughout the Knights lineup. So, again, you could take some shots on guys 16, 18, 20-1 to be able to put that first puck in the net.
At least one of the cool things is that the NBA and NHL has done a really good job of staggering the schedule. I think you've got the NBA playing Thursday, Sunday, with Game 1 of the NHL Finals on Saturday, and then Game 2 on Monday. So, again, come check out our Race and Sports books. Hang out, enjoy the atmosphere, because for these 2 championship series, it's really going to be a lot of fun, and great time to get the app, as Jay mentioned. Sign up for the app. Still have a bonus going on right now. Just kind of a fun time this time of year, tied to all the baseball that's going on as well.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the screens behind us, and I know it's like walking into a movie theater with 3 giant screens, and so when these games are going on, whether it's an NBA Finals game or the NHL Finals game, they'll be on the big giant screen behind us, full sound. So a great place to enjoy and watch the game if you can't get down to T-Mobile.
Yeah, we've touched, guys, a little bit on both the NBA and NHL Finals, but we don't want to forget about the NFL. We know that June 1 cuts are coming, and prior to that, we already saw a big name that's been cut or waived, and that's DeAndre Hopkins. And where is he going to go? I think could really change the balance of maybe what's out there right now. The 2 teams that were in on him draft day for trades were the Chiefs and Bills. Can you imagine him with Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes? The Browns, maybe he's with Deshaun Watson again. But a sleeper team to look for, we know they have 7 wideouts right now, and some big names, is the New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers. So where do you think DeAndre Hopkins is going to go, and what kind of impact would he make if he went to one of those 4 teams?
Well, I think he makes a huge impact no matter where he goes. I think this is more of a DeAndre Hopkins, who do I want to go play with?
Right.
He's talked about wanting to go play with a premium quarterback, wanting to go play with a team that is playoff bound and playoff ready and ready to go make that championship run. So it really does cut out a vast majority of some of the bottom tier teams that maybe need a wide receiver desperately. any of those teams that he's going to go to already have a number 1 and a number 2. So if wherever he would go, he would potentially leapfrog one of those guys. So I don't know if you want to break up that character in your locker room to bring in a guy like this. Well, it'll be interesting to see who pulls this trigger. You talk about Cleveland is that the relationship to Deshaun Watson there, who obviously he played with in Houston. They've got a loaded wide receiver room. They're obviously with Cooper being their number 1 at this time. So Hopkins could go in there and be a number 1.
He won 1A.
And obviously the Chiefs have been doing it with kind of a hodgepodge of guys. Kelsey really is the tight end, is their number 1 guy. So definitely a need there for the Chiefs.
He could be the number 1 wideout on the depth chart if he were to go there.
So, I mean, it's an interesting conversation. We'll see where it leads. It definitely will change some prices on those teams at the top. But another one, we talk about from a homegrown Raiders standpoint is all this news and circulation about Jimmy G and the foot surgery and where he'll be as we go into camp and what does that mean to the Raiders. We're still with the Raiders,
Could the GOAT be at quarterback for the Raiders?
Well, but I mean, they're sitting at that 4th spot in the AFC West. We fully expect the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Broncos, the Broncos especially, to have somewhat a better season for Wilson. And the Raiders are sitting in that 4th spot. But if Garoppolo's healthy, do they have enough? And if Garoppolo's not healthy, what does that mean to the Raiders, and what kind of season could they be looking for if he's not good to go?
Couple of big name guys that are coming out next year. Of course, Caleb Williams and May, the 2 guys from North Carolina and Southern Cal. So we'll see what the Raiders end up doing. But again, watch for June 1 cuts because Delvin Cook could be a guy that's cut. They're already talking about Matson being a 3-down back. He's listed as number 1 on the depth chart. And a lot of big name guys could be moved over the next week or so in the NFL, which could have some implications as far as future goes and things like that.
Yeah, and again, we've continued to work through a lot of the NFL props and stuff like that. So about a week ago, we put up all the NFL over-under season wins. So continue to look through that NFL menu. It's going to grow as we continue to get through the summer months and get closer to that kind of August 1st date. But the prop menu is going to continue to grow in the NFL, as well as college football. Starting to add all the college football games, college football props, college football conferences. So again, just another reason to get on the app, get yourself prepared to be able to get all these great bets.
I know real quick, we've talked about the Knights a little bit. We've talked about the Raiders. Have to talk about the Aces too, defending WNBA champs. They're off to a red-hot start, kind of an epic pace, the way they're winning games right now. All the WNBA games are on the board as well. Great time to get the app, guys. Again, it's championship week. It should be fun. We'll be breaking down a lot of stuff later next week to see where we're at in both leagues. For Jason, I'm Chucky. We're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook for the Sports Betting Podcast, Bookends. Good luck, and we'll see you guys real soon.